Welcome, everybody, to First Tuesday with Brian Ricks. Brian, super excited to have you here talking with us. And for those who are not familiar with our First Tuesday, conversations, we do this typically on the first Tuesday of the month. Today happens to be the third Tuesday of the month because we've had to reschedule. So we're finally able to sit down and talk to each other, which I'm excited about. But First Tuesday is a way that Compassion Works for All can not only give back to our donors and supporters who we ask so much from, but this is a way of us being able to give back to you in that regard. But it's also a way of accomplishing what we consider to be our outside advocacy work. We have inside work where we provide mindfulness meditation programs for folks who are incarcerated. And we have recently also begun teaching these in a recovery center called the Nehemiah House, which we will get into here in a moment. So that's our inside work. Our outside advocacy work is our hope that we can help make sure everybody in the world knows that if a person has been incarcerated, they do not stop being human at that moment, that they continue to be human, they continue to have personalities, they continue to have family and friends and all the things that make us people. We just sort of stop treating them like it. And so our hope is that the more stories we're able to tell, the more people we're able to put in front of the general public, the more people will be reminded that that people are people. So that's a big reason for why we're here today. To that end, we are speaking today with Brian Ricks. And Brian, we're going to get all through your story and stuff, but do you want to take just a second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, my name is Brian Ricks. I am blessed to be the operations manager at the Union Rescue Mission Nehemiah House. It's a long-term faith-based recovery. Mine's pretty much just your average story. Person making the wrong mistakes, making the wrong choices, being given a title by this person, to the point where one day it was just enough was enough. You know, when you reach the bottom and then you find out at the bottom there's a cellar door and the ladder goes down to another little level. Well, I used to just meditate there, but I got put in a program at Pulaski County Jail called the CSI program, started by Sheriff Higgins, but it's being ran by Miss Kathy McConnell. And, you know, community, safety, integrity. So I started learning the tools and how to not only better myself, but start figuring out what was wrong up here. You know, what was I missing? What wasn't firing properly? Or what was I not seeing that was keeping me from being the person that I should be, living up to my full potential? And then that's how I met Corey Jones. He was teaching mindful meditation, and I was one of those people to where I'm so used to people giving me an answer, do this, you'll be better, this, that, or the other. It's hard to accept an answer to a question when you don't know the equation or the problem to it. So I started asking the right questions. And then one day, Corey tells me, well, I can tell you why you get upset. There's something called the amygdala and the hippocampus. And like my mind was like literally blown. Somebody gave me an actual answer to a problem. And so I just started researching on that, and it started helping me find answers to my recovery, to my life. And I've just been going full steam ever since. Come this September, I'll have 2 years clean and sober. I'm blessed to work at a rehab to where I get to use my experience, my life, and my voice to help those that other people, you know, don't really see. People see the problem instead of seeing the person. And now I get to be like, hold up. No, it doesn't work like that with me. I'm here in a little box. I am not my little tag. I am not my little title. I'm who I want to become. And so I just started, and then I just started having people speak into my life. I'm constantly blessed to have Miss Kathy in my corner, Sheriff Higgins, Corey Jones, the wonderful people work at Union Rescue Mission, Jeremy Burton, Derek Jones, Pastor Keith. And I just love how in scripture how Jesus brought everybody together from different avenues, but they meshed so well. And I love that I get to be a piece of that puzzle. Like I'm learning that my life is important. Like I have value, not by what I'm able to do, but individually, I'm a part of the whole. And without me, the world doesn't work the way it should. Yeah. That's my view. So I'm just blessed to be a part of giving back and learning as much as I can.
Yeah, I love it. That's so good. I say quite often that every time I go into the jail to teach, especially at the CSI program that you mentioned, that is where we first crossed paths. But whenever I go in and teach, I often leave with my mind expanded on what it means to be incarcerated, what it means to have your freedom taken away like that. Will you take just a couple of moments, maybe for people who have never been incarcerated, to just kind of walk through what is it like maybe what is it that people who have never been incarcerated maybe don't actually know about what it's like to be incarcerated?
Well, I tell the guys and the ladies at the mission that confinement is judged by two things. You have physical confinement, you have mental confinement. So a lot of people go through their lives being told where they can go, what they can do, this, that, and the other. So in their mind, they feel like they're trapped in a jail cell. Physical confinement, like up at Pulaski County Jail, is kind of the same thing. So I tell people, picture yourself walking into a large building, let's say like an aircraft hangar, and everything you possibly could need is there. You have running water, you have electricity, you have this, that, and the other. Now, mind you, you're 21 years old or 18. You have the ability to think for yourself, make your own decisions, choices, go about your life like any normal human being would. Now, the twist to that is when you walk into that building, the door behind you is locked. And now you're in an area to where other people's rules, regulations, and what they say are being dictated over your life. Not that, and I want everybody to understand, I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. It is what it is. When you're a child, you're governed by your parents. Your parents tell you what you're supposed to do, what you're not allowed to do, because they're giving you a little area of space for you to grow. Confinement is kind of like the same way, but it's a lot different when you're an adult. When you know how to do your hygiene, how to feed yourself, how to cook, how to do things like that. But when you're in confinement, your life is dictated by another human being. That right there is the kicker. What the hard reality to that is, a lot of people can deal with that when it's their choice. Mm-hmm. When it's not their choice, that's where the mind starts sitting there going, well, why do I have to do this? Why am I confined to this? Why this? Why? And it becomes paramount when that door is locked. See, if you can walk into a place and of your own free will, get up and walk back out the door you came, that's not considered confinement to me. But when that's taken away to where you're told that you can't leave, this, that, and the other, that's basically what confinement is. I mean, for me, it's more or less like when another person can dictate what you do, how you do it, and when you do it, and you can't leave from said space, that's confinement.
Yeah. I like that. That's really, really good. And that we can be in prison anywhere, even if it's not physically, that there's a mental aspect to prison as well. One of our board members, Kaleem Nazim, he was our first Tuesday conversation last month. He made the comment that, especially toward the end of his time in prison, that he often would have conversations with people who came in from the free world, and he would sort of shoot the breeze with them. How you doing? How's the weather today? From time to time, someone would ask him about why he speaks so freely to people, and he would tell them it's just one free person having a conversation with another free person. Absolutely. And that was how he began to see himself, that he was free, even though he was confined. I love that you use that word, by the way, that you use confined. Even though he was confined, mentally, he found a place where he could be free. Yeah.
Well, that also goes in the same aspect, like you take someone who's in the military and say they get deployed to a area to where you have to stay confined on a military post. Now, mind you, you have like maybe 10, 15-foot security fence, double layer, and every single day you have to go around the perimeter. Now, some people have to stay in that confined area 3 months, 6 months, depend on how their tour is. So the difference is the military condition your mind for that specific environment, for that specific thing. You go through training to where, say, for 2 weeks, you're going to be confined in an area. Every day you wake up, you go to chow, you shower, then you go to your office, which is like a little cubicle. Mind you, you're still in that same confined space. You're not being allowed to leave because it's a combat environment. So you know you're going to be there for 6 months. You got to run the wire. There's IEDs, there's this, there's that, there's every single other thing. The only difference between the military and how they're confined and someone, say, in a prison who's confined is how they view it. And that's what I always tell people. Your perspective and how you see things really shows how you view the world. So a lot of people, like my time at Pulaski County was like 7 to 8 months. And the reason people are like, well, why aren't you like antsy all the time? Because I know how my mind operates. I know how to be in a confined space. So I started using the time to start learning about me. You know, it's the weirdest thing, you know, time in Pulaski County gave me time to do what I needed to do. I didn't have to worry about electric bill, didn't have to worry about working. And I had people strategically placed around me like a chessboard to where if something didn't register right and I couldn't figure out why my mind was processing something like that, I could go to you and ask, what's the scientific aspect of why this isn't working? Or I'm trying to figure out why my thoughts and why the way I've been doing things isn't work. Now, mind you, I'm still in the confined spot, but up here, I'm free as a bird because I have the opportunity up here to cast every single thing away and start asking Miss Kathy, how do I get my life in order? How can I start setting up this time so that when I get to this point, I won't fall back? So I start making plans to start doing this, and it's been working. I guess I'm just the oddity like that, but I started learning that how I perceive things is how my life will be. So if I constantly thinking that I'm going to be in a confined spot, okay, well then that's where I'm going to be. But if up here, I look at it like I have the opportunity to where while I'm in this space, I can do the things I need to do to work on me and focus on me. So I'm not confined, I'm free.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's so well said. And you said that you're an oddity in that way. And I think just in my limited experience with people who are incarcerated or people who are confined, that is a bit of an oddity because a lot of folks really struggle to get to that mindset while they are incarcerated. So was there something particularly that allowed you to get to that place? Is there something that you see in other people that's preventing them from being in that place where they're mentally free?
Yeah. So we used to do these things called morning meditations, and we also do it at Nehemiah. So what I've incorporated is we do positive enforcement, positive meditation. So one of the people we listen to is Eric Thomas. And Eric Thomas always talks about you define what you want to do. Well, there was one time there was a snippet that came on, and I think it was Steve Harvey talking about there are 8 billion people on the planet. And if you take those 8 billion people and dig up every single person that ever existed, and you check everyone's fingerprint, not one single person will have your fingerprint. If you take the human brain and you hook it up with leads and you start monitoring the electronic impulses, the brain waves, and the sound your brain makes when it functions, it runs at its own frequency. just like an average person has their own distinctive scent. Well, then I started looking at it like, okay, nobody has my scent. Nobody had my fingerprint. So I really am an anomaly. I am an oddity because nobody was created to do what I do. Nobody was created to walk in my shoes. Nobody was created to do what you do. Nobody was created to do what Miss Kathy do. So that oddity is becoming a good thing because I'm learning that even when I'm failing, I'm learning to be better than I was because nobody will be able to outdo me, outthink me, or outwork me at me doing what I was created to do. And that's just being the oddity that I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a struggle for other people to arrive at, it seems like, who are incarcerated. And is there I guess, how would you categorize that? I mean, is that just like lack of self-awareness? Is it what? And I'm not fishing for anything here. I'm not trying to set you up.
I get what you're saying. So I kind of categorize it in two things. Now, I'm going off the research that I've done and what I remember. So let's just use addicts. Most people are addicted to something by definition that consumes their life to where it becomes the focal point of their life. Like their life revolves around it, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a lifestyle, work, this, that, or the other. So when that right there is the focus of everything, everything else is put on the sideburn. Step one is by far, to me, considered the hardest step. I tell the guys, recovery is simple. It's as simple as you want it to be. But the moment it becomes difficult is when you don't believe that you can do it. Now, mind you, go back to trauma, because most people who are addicts have trauma, some type of neglect, abandonment, single parent household. So you have a lot of guys growing up without having that father-son dynamic. The mother was gone. So a young man doesn't understand that it's okay to be compassionate, because I'm a firm believer. Your strength and courage come from your father, but your compassion and empathy come from your mother. So when one parent is out of the household, you miss out on that dynamic. That means that a child is growing up not being told that they're loved. Some children are being raised not knowing that they're important. So their value in themselves is distorted. So 10 years of this, 15 years of this, 20 years of this being thought of as a criminal, as an addict, as garbage, this, that, other than what they were created to be or what they could be, sticks in up here.
Yeah.
So if you go 10 years thinking that you'll never amount to anything, that you're always going to be an addict, that you're always going to be a criminal, so a man thinks, so a man is. So the only thing that switches that is if you start believing something different. One of the good things I love, and Mama Kathy used to always instill it in us, honesty. You know, sometimes you have to be told the truth in order for you to move forward. And I'm learning that a lot of people will believe a lie harder or quicker than they will the truth. And that being said is because they don't want to deal with the ramifications of the truth. It's easier to believe that I'm always going to be an addict, so that when you fail, that's the stigma you're going to be stuck with. So they don't try. We don't try. We don't do this. We don't do that. But when you have somebody who will not let you quit, who constantly says, okay, well, I see something in you that you don't see. Because, you know, from an addict's point of view, who's been doing drugs for almost 30 years, I only saw what I felt, the things that I had on the inside. So I'm seeing from the inside out. So up here, I'm not seeing what everybody else sees because I'm not constantly looking in a mirror. But when you have somebody tell you, well, you can do this. You can do this. You have every single thing you need to recover, stay sober, become a good citizen and be a part of the community and do greater things, not just for yourself and the people around you, but the people who are following in your footsteps. And the more you start seeing that, you'll start trying more.
Yeah.
Whether you fail or not, trying is one of the biggest parts of recovery actually in life. You know, I tell my kids all the time, why do we fall? So that we can learn to get back up. And it's that chaotic trial and error that a lot of people are scared, because fear is like one of the biggest things up here. Because if there's just that slight inkling that you're going to fail, and it overpowers you and scares you so much that you don't even want to try, then that's what it's going to be like for the rest of your life. So it's all about up here.
And I could see how that sense of overwhelm would make it easier to just surround yourself with other people who also feel overwhelmed, other people who are not really interested in facing a reality where perhaps they're not addicted, or where perhaps they're not living out whatever it was that got them into jail or prison in the first place. I can see how it would be comforting to surround yourself with other people of a like mindset. And I love what you said about the truth. It reminds me of something Jack Cornfield says, that any attempt to better yourself without first telling the truth is like trying to row a boat across a stream while you're still attached to the dock. That you can put in all the work all day that you want to do, but you're not going to go anywhere. And it's all going to be pretty fruitless if you're not willing to tell the truth. Will you just kind of, in the same way that you described what prison is like for maybe for people who are not incarcerated, will you describe just for a moment what addiction is like for people who have ever experience chemical or substance addiction?
Okay, so
and I'm curious, and I also want to know why you laughed at that question.
Why are you laughing when I ask you that question?
Yeah, I absolutely wondered that.
Because after going on almost 2 years, I can laugh at that.
Yeah.
For me, because I have to find joy and humor in the things that used to hold me back. I have become a person, like, I look at everything in 3 aspects: the mental, the physical, and the emotional. So for an addict, for me, the easiest way to describe addiction is, I have it up here and I'm trying to put it in a context to where pain. That is the one thing that every single person in this world can understand is pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, or neurological mental pain. So for me, addiction hit all 3 aspects. Like when I was younger, I had a car accident and I started having seizures. So every once in a while, I'd get these pains. And I'd always want to try to find a way to not deal with it because it hurt too much. So you had pills, this, that, and the other, somewhat worked. Then you had the physical aspect. I'm one of those children that was physically, emotionally, sexually abused and stuff like that. And it leaves scars. Like I have all kind of scars from abuse and stuff like that.
Wow.
And you can put a Band-Aid on it, but it's still going to be there. You're going to have the scar. And then you have the emotional one, which to me, sitting from a male point of view, is the hardest. So, you know, that old saying that pull up your britches, men aren't supposed to cry. So I grew up in an era to where a man crying or a man showing any type of empathy other than strength, this, that, and the other was looked down on. So my addiction hit every single aspect of it. I used anything to numb the pain. So I use drugs to keep this from hurting, because once that pain come in, I start thinking about every single thing else that was wrong, that was done to me. The physical pain, when I see the scars, I get depressed, I get angry, and then all the emotional pain. And so it got to a point to where I didn't know how to deal with it. Now, with my mom and dad separating and divorced, I come from a very large family. Like my mom is one from a tribe and my dad is like one from a tribe, but it was all that feeling of being alone in a crowded room.
Yeah.
Because I was the oddity. My dad, popular basketball, my brother, he basketball, football, sister, basketball, softball. I was more up here. And so I didn't do the things that everybody else wanted to, but when the things were done to me, nobody came and said, let me help you. I apologize that this happened to you. It's not your fault. So nobody working on that. And I tell people that my addiction became like a big balloon. I just blow into it and stack all my problems and my issues. And then one day it was to a point to where I felt like that balloon was going to blow up. And I found anything and everything from meth to pot to codeine pills to try to control something. Now, mind you, a grown man with an inner child trying to fix a problem that I wasn't capable of fixing. So I tell them it's like this. If you leave someone to their own devices, they're going to do whatever they can to deal with it the best way they know how.
Yeah.
That was me. I used drugs to deal with my addiction because I was the only one dealing with it.
Wow.
You know, I love my mother, and my mother had her issues and things she had to go through, and I don't hold that against her. My dad, I've forgiven him. I've moved past. He had issues of his own. So I'm to a point now to where I see addiction physically, mentally, and emotionally as like a cancerous disease. It's something that will affect you physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I mean, like, it will eat at you. I tell people, if you ever wanted to know how the devil will get you, he will use every single thing he can to not only latch onto you, but keep you subservient to what he wants. I've always been told I'm highly intelligent. I'm pretty physically fit, and I'm like built forward, tough, military tough. But drugs ran me through that. I've seen drugs and alcohol hit people to where it just like, I mean, it's weirdest thing when you have something that in itself, you wrap your whole existence around. Like it defines who you are. Like drugs. It will consume you to the point to where you will do anything and everything just to physically have it. Same thing with the job. If work is your addiction, porn your addiction, sex your addiction, even a sinful nature is your addiction. And I mean, once it has you, you think that you're locked in a cage. And on my own devices, I did not know how to get out. I mean, like, I was to the point to where I didn't know the questions to ask. I didn't know the people to talk to. And I was literally not only physically, mentally, and emotionally killing myself, but everybody around.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I could give you a physical idea of what it is. I mean, like, pick the biggest, baddest monster in any horror movie. That's addiction. Take the thing that you're scared of more than anything in existence, snakes, spiders, falling, anything, that's addiction. Because once it has you, like fear, it's hard to get away from.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was talking to the guys at Nehemiah House the other day about this. That I grew up. I was in elementary school in the early '80s when Nancy Reagan's "Just Say No" campaign came out, and my whole life, drugs have been talked about as a choice that you choose to take drugs, and
Mhm.
but it's the way that I chose to wear this shirt today. Like it's just this kind of choice that has no context, and it didn't lead you into it. So what is your response whenever people say taking drugs is a choice and you should just say no, and then you'll get off drugs and you won't deal with them anymore?
Okay. So I tell people like this. So I meet a lot of different people, and like I can give you the perfect example. I can't give names, but there were two ladies who taught at the CSI program. One lady had lost her son to an overdose. Now, so her and I were talking, and she had said something about, she grew up around that era. So did I. Everything is a choice. And a lot of people want to sit there and say, no, I didn't have a choice. If somebody puts a gun up to your head and says, you're going to do this, you sit there and say, I didn't have a choice. No, actually, you do. You still have the choice to say no. People won't accept that because they don't want to deal with the consequences. But as far as like choice, it's understanding. So, and I love the dynamic that people always go like hard right, negative with it, this, that, and the other. So I'll put it to you like this. Okay. So if I remember correctly, you've never done a drug in your life.
Correct.
All right. I've done drugs. So how are we going to get an understanding of where we can meet in the middle? Because neutral ground is where you're going to start understanding how to deal with this monster called addiction. And I told her, just like you, I don't know what it's like not being an addict because I'm going to be in recovery for the rest of my life. But I'm still one choice away. Just like you, you're one choice away from becoming an alcoholic, becoming a drug addict. So yes, you do have a choice because the choice is yours. I could sit there and blame my dad saying, you're the reason I became a drug addict. No, my dad may have played a part, but the choice was still mine. The choice was still mine to do the things I did. And the moment I accepted that, recovery became simple. But as far as in like somebody sitting there saying, all you have to do is say no. I met a guy once, clean cut, blue collar, this, that, and the other. And I mean, like, this guy was the poster child of saying no to drugs and all this and don't drink and drive. And I mean, he was like a mad genius. And one day his daughter had got so sick that doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. And when they finally figured out what was wrong, his insurance wouldn't pay for it. She needed special stuff. I'm talking about to save his daughters was going to cost like 5 to 6 figures. Man couldn't afford it. Doctor said his daughter without this treatment would have 6 months to live. The man was a computer genius. Met the right people, this, that, and the other. Next thing you know, this man's counterfeiting. And he did what he had to save his child. Man got arrested, man became a criminal. Now, people sit there and say every single thing is a choice. Yes, but you don't know what choice you would make until you're in that situation.
Yeah.
Some people can go to jail, get like arrested, spend 2 or 3 nights in jail, and they're scared straight. Other people have been dealing with pains and situation and addiction so long to where they view jail time as just another place to catch up on rest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a choice, but the choice is, where do you want to meet so that we can get a better understanding? So I like neutral ground because it's not my way or your way, because a lot of people in society are starting to see things as absolutes. Like if I'm right, you have to be wrong. If you're wrong or right, I have to be wrong. But where is that balance in it? I tell it's all up here, how you perceive things. Like, okay, you've never been an addict. I have. Well, what's the common ground we can meet on? We're both men. We both have kids. And I know what I would do for the well-being and safety of my kids. So if it comes to like my son having problems with trying to focus his mind and deal with emotions, I don't know how to do that, but I know where I can meet on neutral ground and get you to come over. So that's where that empathy and everything comes in, because yeah, it is a choice, but the choice is for you.
Yeah.
The same answer that you would give to a situation may not be the same answer I give. May not be the same answer someone else gives, because we're all different. Circumstances and situations don't always apply as absolutes to every situation.
Yeah. And I think I hear you talking about just how powerful self-awareness can be. That it with self-awareness, you can recognize what events, what circumstances brought you to a certain point, but then you also recognize your own contribution to those events and circumstances and consequences.
Yeah.
And that seems like a really powerful place to be, where I know we've talked before about the Cartman drama triangle, where you've got the rescuer, the persecutor, and the victim. And that victim place is a really powerful place to be.
Oh, yeah.
And if your problems can be blamed on everyone else, then you just keep it in circulation. But if you can shift over to become the creator rather than the victim, that doesn't discount what has happened to you, and it doesn't downplay or dismiss it by any means, but it's something that you take and use it to empower yourself to look forward rather than always looking backwards. So I'm glad that once again we've circled back to the Cartman drama triangle, because I think everything in life comes back to that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it does.
just summed up by that. So I'm glad we got to work that in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
But see, here's that cool part of that whole dynamic. Plays two parts. One, how you perceive it and how I perceive it, and what's the truth about it. So it doesn't matter if you're the victim, the persecutor, if everybody's honest about them. Like, my name is Brian, I'm 46 years old, I'm a recovering drug addict. I have a problem with this. I have a problem with this. I don't know how to fix this. What can I do? It sounds simple, and it really is. But the thing is, I have to be willing to deal with the ramifications of being honest. So if me being honest saying that I'm a 46-year-old recovering drug addict, that means I'm willing to deal with what people say, how they think, how they react, and this. That's life. But here's the kicker, though. The easiest way to deal with that is when you learn to see the value in yourself. Like, say, for instance, I tell the guys all the time, if this pen right here was worth like $10 million and I offered it to you, would you take it? 9 times out of 10, people be like, yeah, what's the strings? And I'm like, no, there's no strings attached. I can get 5 lawyers. They can draw up paper and everything. And if they sat there and said it's good and I offered this $10 million pen to you, would you take it? 98% of everybody says yes. And I'll go, before I hand this to you, I want to let you know that this pen worth $10 million was used to fund child pornography, child sex trafficking, slavery, like chaos and evil incarnate. Would you still take it? And they'd be like, nah, man, I can't take that. And I'm like sitting here like, why? Because it was used for this and it was used for that. I didn't ask about its use. I said about its value. See, this still is worth $10 million. No matter if it's thrown in a ditch, no matter if it's used to fund drug trafficking, or whether it was used to build an orphanage or a halfway house or given to the Red Cross, it still has its value. So no matter what anybody says about me, the choices I've made and where I am now, I'm still Brian. I'm not going to be that that ADC or Pulaski County number. I'm who I choose to become because I have value in and of myself. No matter what mistakes I was used to make or that I've made on my own, I'm still going to have the value of me being me. And it took somebody constantly telling me, and then would look at me and say, sorry, not sorry. And then I'd get it. But I see it. And somebody can tell me that I'm important, that I'm special, that I'm gifted until I believe it wholeheartedly as the honest truth, then it's not going to mean nothing. But the moment I do, the moment I see it in here, I feel it in here, and it reverberates like the confidence I have in myself to where, okay, I'm a Black man born in the South. I know there's a lot of people that don't like me. But is that going to change who I am? No, it just changes the way people view it. But I'm still going to be me. And when I saw the value I had in myself, I'm like sitting here like, dude, you a cold piece up there. Because I was created to be me.
Yeah.
Flaws and all, mistakes and all. Because last time I checked, nobody on this planet's perfect. Yeah. Everybody's done stuff that they're trying to probably throw in the closet, lock it, take the key, mail it to Africa, and tell somebody to bury it. But when you can learn to look at said mistakes and go, okay, but I'm better from it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's going to be somebody that I meet in my life that is in recovery. And like me, they've had a family member die back to back to back to back to back to back to back. And this would be their first time dealing with something like that off drugs. And they're going to be sitting here like, I don't know how to do this. I can't do this. Hello. I did it. Even if I'm just the only one that they see, at least they're seeing someone, especially in addiction and recovery. Words really don't matter. Yeah, they help. Yeah. But for me, most of the addicts and the people in recovery I know like visual aids.
Yeah.
Like when I got to the Nehemiah house, I met a couple of guys, like our bosses are in recovery, have been in recovery, and I see they're walking. I'm like, man, he's been through the same stuff I've been through. Like literally, I could take his shoes off, put them on my feet and go, ooh, that's a little way too comfortable. But I can do it. Yeah. Because I see the value in what I'm capable of doing in and of myself.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah. And I love that because I do think that it takes a little bit of that overwhelming sense away whenever you can see that it's doable, that it's possible. And sometimes that might be the only thing that gets people going is that just that tiny little belief that, okay, at least that first decision to try is possible. It's possible for me to decide to try, and then it's possible for me to decide to do this. And yeah, I love that a lot. Will you take just a few minutes here as we kind of wind down? Will you take just a few minutes to talk about Nehemiah House? What Absolutely. Is it? What the heck are you doing over there? And yeah,
anything and everything. Nehemiah House, along with the Dorcas House, is it's a faith-based recovery program for drugs, alcohol, just as we like to pull it, anything that pulls us away from God, like it becomes the focus to be in this an addiction, whether it's word, as Mama Kathy calls it, shiny things, just anything that becomes the paramount of your life. What we do is we start at the foundation. There's a lot of recovery places out there, but Nehemiah House in Dorcas, part of the Union Rescue Mission, has been doing this for 75 years. And I mean, like when you have people like Kyle Brewer, who is a walking example, who went through the Nehemiah House and is doing things for this community that nobody thought that a recovering addict would be able to do. He's doing it. So we're just showing men and women that, first off, we are important.
Yeah.
That we find that importance and that value in Christ Jesus. And once we build that little foundation right there, like, doesn't matter what anybody else says, Jesus Christ paid that price for you. So you are important. So once that little brick is laid, the foundation, then we start working on ways to deal with the things that most people don't want to deal with, like honesty, like other ways to look at why you did drugs, like actually go to the root of your trauma. And then we start working through it through our faith-based 12 steps, anger management. And the cool thing about it is now we're at a point to where when you graduate, you can go further along in the program and you go into a discipleship program. I mean, like, I get to disciple people who Jesus Christ is and show people how recovery works through Christ. I mean, like, dude, it's mind-boggling and amazing.
Cool. Well, good. Yes, and we're excited to be part of that in a small way on Wednesday afternoon at 2:00. Sitting.
I love how you say that it's a small way. So here's what the guys say about you. So when you came in, they didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
Some of us who've been through the CSI program that are there, we know all about you. Now it's to the point to where Wednesday has become paramount, because I really want you to know how little you might think it is, because it's a broad spectrum. But for somebody who can sit there and go, okay, now I know why I get mad. So I need to figure out why this amygdala isn't working right, or how the guys now are meditating on their own. And they're not trying to block things out. They're just, I see it. And they're acknowledging it. They're giving it form. And if it's not necessary, getting rid of it. Yeah. So you may see it as a small thing, but you have become an intricate part of that house and that family. And we really do appreciate it.
Well, good. I'm very happy to hear that. And I absolutely thoroughly enjoy being there. It's a hungry group for sure. And a group that they are all clearly very serious about wanting to kick their addiction. But I would say that is a small part of the conversations that we have, because it seems like they've all seen that addiction is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole puzzle. Like I need to get that piece figured out, but there's more to me than just my addiction. And those, sometimes that's stated explicitly, sometimes it's stated kind of more implicitly, but I hear that a good deal. And I think that's such a wonderful thing that's just part of the culture there at Nehemiah House, that this is about you as a human being, not just, you're not just sentenced to recovery because the court said to go do it. You got to check that box and then, go on with your life. But, and maybe that brings some people there, but it evolves into more than that.
Well, here's the kicker about that though. Numbers wise, the majority, like 80-something% to 90-something%, if I remember reading correctly, aren't required to be there.
Wow.
I wasn't required to be there.
Yeah.
I could have went this route, but majority of the individuals that come there are there because they choose to.
Wow.
And with it being a long-term rehab, that's where the metal meets the road.
Yeah. And
so when you have guys that have been there or women that have been part for 6 months of doing nothing but working on them, it's easy to say, man, I can do this, I can do that. But when you're in an environment to where your only focus is you, not the kids are taken care of, the job will be there when you get back. But when you're able to focus on you, that's why a lot of the people are actually doing great things. Because how often do you have a chance to sit there and everything is all about you?
Right.
So when you take that value, you take the mindful way of looking at it, your anger management, your Series 33, every single piece of the puzzle that you can find to start making the picture of your life. It's like writing a book. Sometimes your ink and your pen may stop working and you might have to stop for a little bit. And until you get another pen, You're going to be stuck there waiting on it.
Yeah.
Same with here. There's so many different ways for a person to better themselves. But how often do you have the chance for 6 to 9 months to do nothing but work on you?
Yeah. Man, that's so good. Well, we're at our 1 hour, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. Brian, thank you so much for this conversation and just for who you are and for what you do. It's so good.